So, what does a healed, fearful avoidant look like in a long-term relationship? Well, healing as a fearful avoidant isn't about becoming completely fearless. It's about learning to love without abandoning themselves or somebody else. And so, in the next 7 minutes, you are going to see how a fearful avoidant who's healed shows up in love and what some of those crucial differences are between before they're healed versus after, and how radically different it actually looks from the unhealed version. So I want to take you through 7 major things. Okay, here's the first one. Emotional regulation replaces reactivity. So, as a fearful avoidant attachment style, one of the biggest things that's going to happen to you all the time before you're really in there and plugged into doing the work and healing is that you are going to find yourself constantly triggered by things. When I was a fearful avoidant attachment style, I can remember like almost every day something was triggering me or bothering me or upsetting me or hurting me. And I often wouldn't talk about those things or had any healthy tools or strategies for how to do those things. But you would be absolutely shocked once you actually heal at how much like brain power you get back. Because when so much of the real estate, your mental, emotional real estate is taken up by either being triggered by somebody or doing some sort of behavior that's you trying to de-stress from the trigger, like drinking or smoking or whatever it might be, because you're trying to soothe, and the costs of those things that start to add up long term as your subconscious strategy to attempt to regulate your nervous system. When you stop getting triggered so often, and then as a result, you stop partaking in so many unhealthy behaviors, it's like your world opens up. Okay. You'll start to feel like, whoa, I have all this brain capacity to actually create and to connect and to plan my life and think forward into the future. And all of this space comes back that can be used for really beautiful, fulfilling things. So that's one of the biggest things. And emotional regulation as a fearful avoidant is one of the most important things. And one thing that I think it's really important to note for a fearful avoidant, and this kind of goes hand in hand with number two, is that you will literally have less triggers, okay? And more accountability for them. So I like to think of triggers as being mines in a minefield, okay? And I want you to imagine that as a fearful avoidant attachment style, when you went through your early childhood experiences or your attachment formation, what you'll have found is that there were a lot of things that were painful. So maybe some days you felt trapped in connection. Maybe other days you felt helpless trying to lean on somebody and they didn't come through or show up. And so then you felt like, oh my gosh, I never want to lean or rely on somebody again or open up. Then maybe some days you felt abandoned or afraid of being abandoned. And other days you felt betrayed and like you couldn't trust your environment or caregivers. And so you have all of these things every time these events take place. It's like planting mines in a minefield. And then somebody's just walking along, in the minefield one day, doesn't realize it's a minefield, and these triggers kind of go off. And that's not your fault as a fearful avoidant, right? That's the result of like conditioning and attachment dynamics that created these mines in your minefield to begin with. But it is your responsibility because only you can do the work to really fix it. And so much of the healing journey for a fearful avoidant is about learning to make sure you deactivate those minds in the minefield. In other words, leverage neuroscience to rewire all of these scary ideas, right? All these things that are going to come to the surface. And that's what a trigger is, right? It's like you're basically having something in your past stored experiences, and then something comes along and acts as a catalyst to bring that thing up right now. Like maybe you had this abandonment mine in childhood. And then as an adult, all this time later, you're in a dynamic with somebody where they are pulling away or they're inconsistent, and that minefield gets activated. That mine in your minefield gets activated. It like goes off, right? And it's like, well, that's just there to protect you. That's your subconscious mind and nervous system trying to do their job. It's like we have to have the mine explode, and that's a way to protect ourselves and keep people away. But the reality is that those are usually the biggest things that are completely disrupting your life as a whole. And there's this accumulation of cost that takes place every time a mine goes off, because then there's damage done and then you have to repair the damage and then you feel guilty about the damage. And so, just because you have mines in your minefield doesn't mean that that's the way that all of life and relationships have to go. And what we can really do, and I have other videos on this channel that talk about it, but there's so many tools for how to recondition your subconscious mind so that you don't have to constantly carry these things around with you. Your triggers or your minds in your minefield, these are your relationship pieces of baggage that you carry around. The fear of being abandoned, the fear of being betrayed, the fear of being trapped or helpless or emotionally unsafe. And a lot of fearful wounds be like, I'm not emotionally unsafe. You know that you have these unsafe core wounds if you're constantly in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You're reacting to those things that have been conditioned into your mind, and those minds are constantly going off, causing you to have to go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And then there's this ripple out effect where once you're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, how are your behaviors? Right? You're either then activating or deactivating, or maybe being critical to somebody or pushing somebody away or stonewalling or numbing through different activities that could be harmful for you. And then there's a cost to those things because now there's more damage done. And so, what you'll start to see is as you heal, not only do you start to get all this mental, emotional real estate back that can be put into like creating and connecting, but you'll see if you're in a relationship with a fearful avoidant, you'll see that they start to have this number one that we've covered, this emotional regulation replacing that reactivity because B, or number two, they literally have less triggers. And as a result of this, they're obviously doing the work at this point. So they start to be accountable for those triggers. And I can remember in my own journey, and I've shared this on this channel before, but I can remember in my own journey of healing as a fearful avoidant, noticing that, and this was a big realization for me, and I really want to share this for any fearful avoidant going through this now. It was a huge, like, sort of pivotal turning point in my own journey. I used to think, and I truly believed this at the time, that if somebody hurt me first, that I could do or say whatever I wanted. Because my interpretation of events is that I was trying so hard not to hurt people in relationships and to show up at the best that I could. And I had all this pressure on myself to really look out for people and be so hyper vigilant about what deep, true friendships or relationships meant to me and what people needed. And I would put all this pressure. So then if somebody hurt me, it was almost like, oh, well, now the gloves are off. Like I can be critical, I can be harsh, I can pull away as much as I want because you hurt me. And then I remember reading this quote, and the quote said, "He who hates evil only creates more of it." And I remember having this like mind-blowing realization going, "Oh, so just because I'm angry at something doesn't mean I can go be or do whatever I want. I'm just creating more of what I don't like in the world." And so recognizing that, whoa, I actually have to be accountable here for my behaviors. Just because somebody hurts me or makes a mistake in a relationship doesn't give me this runway to be like, oh, I can go do whatever I want or behave however I want back in response just because somebody hurt me first. Like, what does that make me? That makes me often, exactly what I'm judging in the other person, but just through this lens of justifying it because it wasn't me that started it. And like, what a crazy thing to think that like I had been living like that for so long and holding myself to that kind of standard where it's like, yeah, I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I can pull away for as long as I want. It's like, wait, what about this like empathetic person I think that I am? Why does that go out the window there? And so that's a really important thing for a fearful avoidant in their healing. It's like having that accountability that instead of projecting or blaming, you're able to recognize these things that are triggering you and show up for them irrespective of the circumstance. Because somebody can be hurtful and they can do hurtful things. And if they do them enough times, you might want to exit that relationship. It might not be a good fit for you. But between the time that you're trying to figure out whether or not it is a good fit and vetting and trying to like get more clarity around the situation, it doesn't just give you this free will to just show up in unhealthy ways, thinking it's justified because you didn't do it first. Okay. So just important marker and just honest, feedback for fearful avoidance if you're in that space. Many of you may not be in that space, but that was something that really rang true for me. Number three, and this is another massive thing. And again, I'll share from my personal experience here. Fearful avoidance, when they start to really heal, they no longer interpret intimacy as a threat. And, I think for myself, because growing up, I had these really confusing, chaotic experiences around closeness and intimacy at times, and not knowing like what to make of certain things or what to trust or who to trust or, just being so confused. What happens is you store those experiences. And then when you start having this connection or closeness and vulnerability again in your adult relationships. And by the way, we all at a subconscious level replace our primary caregivers in our childhood with our primary attachment figure as an adult, which becomes a romantic relationship. So what that actually means and why that's meaningful is that as an adult, your subconscious mind, when you have that level of vulnerability that you do in a romantic relationship, that basically acts as a catalyst to dig up all the different fears and core wounds or associations, programmed or conditioned subconscious associations you have to intimacy and vulnerability. So as a, when you start to feel really vulnerable and close to somebody as an adult, and you're building this like deep loving relationship with a romantic partner, your subconscious mind essentially, in a way, if it had a voice, it goes, oh, what do we know about this level of vulnerability? Oh, we felt this vulnerable last time as a child. And oh, what did vulnerability mean to us as a child? And then all those triggers will come forth. And so for me, and so many fearful ones will probably relate to this, you'll see that it's like you want that closeness, but as soon as it gets real, a lot of things will come with that. A lot of things will come with that where you're going, whoa, this person could now really hurt me. How can I really trust somebody? They could leave at any time. Does it feel emotionally safe for me to really invest? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And you'll start flip-flopping back and forth. But as you start to heal that, you'll learn that being vulnerable is one of the emotional antidotes, and embracing that vulnerability is one of the emotional antidotes to a lot of pain in relationships. Because as you start to become more vulnerable, you'll start to speak up for yourself, communicate about your needs, share when something feels comfortable for you or not okay for you. And that is what gives information to the people around you in close, loving relationships to see you, to understand who you are and what, best they can do in order to protect you or show up for you. And so then you'll have this dynamic of like, oh, when I start embracing vulnerability and I lean into some of these things, people suddenly seem to treat me differently. They're kinder, they're more thoughtful about me. But a lot of that is because you're actually showing yourself in true vulnerability. You're sharing your truth with other people around you so they can better consider you. And by the way, consideration is a huge pillar of trust. Okay. So these are our first three things. Okay. You'll start to see that they lean into vulnerability, and that really makes for much healthier connected relationships. And this is where you get um, a lot more of that like generosity, that kindness, that thoughtfulness from a fearful avoidant, but also the fearful avoidant as a result of that. And this really brings me to point number four. They make room to be loved. Okay. And as a fearful avoidant, usually what you're doing is you are pouring into loving, but your walls are up to receiving love. And that's because you think that, oh, I have to earn my worth in love. I have to, be in a place where I have to do everything for somebody else. And then, like, if they love me, they'll figure out who I am and how to love me too. But the reality is, nobody is a mind reader. Love and healthy relationships do not work like that. And so, what you'll start to see, and this goes hand in hand with needs, is you'll start to express your needs instead of testing or withdrawing. You'll actually start to say what your needs are and stop expecting people to just know and figure it out. And that comes with leaning into that vulnerability. But that will allow you to actually feel like you're in a dynamic with somebody where you can receive love. You won't just be a giver of love, you'll be a receiver of love. Okay. And that comes literally with expressing your needs. So, hugely important point number four. And we still have a couple other ones, but I just want to let you know too, if you're somebody who is a fearful avoidant, and you're wanting help or guidance for how to heal your attachment style and become secure, because it's actually not very hard. It just requires the right tools and a little bit of consistency over time. We actually have a course you can check out fully for free called the Fearful Avoidant Reconditioning course. And it's all about how to rewire your nervous system and attachment style to become secure by following 5 major pillars. And it's all backed by neuroscience. And I will put a link to that down below, but that actually comes just for a limited time. It comes for life. You actually get to keep our attachment styles and intimacy course, which is all about each attachment style and their connection and relationship to sex and intimacy and closeness, and what things will cause them to pull in closer and what things will cause them to sabotage or push away. And so you'll be able to do the work on like healing your attachment style, but also get to keep this $250 course for life if you check that out. And again, we're just doing this for a limited time, so I'll put that link down below if you want to check it out now. Number 5, a huge thing here is that fearful avoidance will stop being in such a push-pull place in a relationship. They'll learn to settle in. And I can remember, in every relationship I was in when I was fearful avoidant, always being like, should I stay? Should I leave? Should I stay? Should I leave? And just feeling constantly pulled between these two parts of me that wanted closeness but felt threatened by it. And that's a really hard way to live in a relationship. It makes it exhausting. That creates an enormous like tax to your nervous system because you're constantly in this like stress mode. And one of the things that I really noticed after becoming securely attached is that entering into that next, like really, vulnerable relationship or connected relationship, I noticed that like safety actually felt safe, closeness actually felt safe, and it felt consistently safe. And it felt like I could breathe in a relationship. Like, oh my goodness, like, okay, this is what it's supposed to feel like. I understand it now. Instead of feeling like I was always walking on eggshells or trying to predict the future, and just developing this inner trust in both myself and my husband that was like, if there's a problem, I just have this trust that we'll solve it. Like if we ever have like a misunderstanding or a miscommunication or a conflict, like that's okay because we're just going to get through it because I saw that I had the tools, to be able to communicate healthily and so did he. And we were both willing to do that. And it's almost like, sounds funny, but I think when I was fearful avoidant, I felt a lot that like, how could you possibly know? Like these thoughts would come to me all the time. I'd be like, yeah, you love someone now, but how could you possibly know that 10 years from now they don't change completely and turn into like a monster or some crazy person? Or how can I trust that 10 years from now I will even still have feelings that are the same? Like, how you can't possibly know that. And that's because I was only ever in relationships that were like dating stage, honeymoon stage, power struggle stage, break up in the power struggle. I'd never lived a relationship beyond the power struggle stage. And after the power struggle stage is the stability, commitment, and bliss stages. And what you'll learn, as you go through and start to heal, and you'll see this on the other side, is that when you make it beyond just the power struggle stage of a relationship, you'll see, whoa, that's actually a really short part of the entire life cycle of a relationship. Like, arguably, if you're pretty secure dating, honeymoon, power struggle, that's maybe altogether like 3 years. And then there's many years that take place in a relationship after that, especially in a long-term relationship. But also, as an analogy, it's like imagine you like invest in a stock and you're investing in the stock. There's at no point going to be a time that you like go and you're like, oh, that Apple stock that I'm investing in, well, that I'm going to now go and like sabotage Apple as the company. It's like, no, 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 you have so much investment there. You want to like care for everything about that. And you want to show up for that. And you'll realize that you can settle into a relationship when you know that both people are constantly investing and have the right tools. And then it's like, oh, well, there's so much care here. Like nobody's going to want to sabotage that because there's so much investment here already. And it creates this overarching sense of like safety. And, for anybody who's fearful avoidant, and I feel you because it's really hard for anybody who's a fearful avoidant, it feels like relationships are so fragile and scary and so unpredictable until you realize that, like, oh, when I have the right tools and I can regulate and I can talk about needs and I can work through conflict, okay, things are solvable problems. And then when we invest in doing that for long enough, you want to protect that whole thing, right? You don't want to just sabotage something you've invested in. You want to protect it. And oh my gosh, that the other person, they're obviously just trying to protect it too. And it creates a sense of like, okay, I can settle in, I can breathe, and I can trust the future. And I think, just empathizing with anybody who's fearful avoidant right now, that is such a foreign concept previously. Like, you're like, there's no way. But I know it would have helped me a lot to just hear somebody kind of explain that. I'm not sure how great of a job I did at explaining that, but just to hear somebody explain that, wait, there's more beyond a relationship without all the doubt and the fear. And when we drop that doubt and fear, it takes away from some of the flip-flopping too. And it's much more easy to stay in a relationship without it dysregulating your nervous system all the time. Okay. So another two major things here that I'll go through a little more quickly. Fearful avoidant attachment styles, they learn to work through problems. I kind of mentioned this in passing, but they'll actually learn to move through conflict, to handle conflict in a healthy way, to communicate through conflict. And, being able to navigate conflict is one of the major pillars of healing your attachment style that we cover in the personal development school. Because learning the proper frameworks for how to communicate through conflict so it doesn't have to be so hard is literally game changing. And it's one of the most important life skills I think we can ever learn. And then the last major thing here is that you'll see for a fearful avoidant, their boundaries become consistent. Okay, so they don't, so many fearful avoidants, they're like boundaryless and then they blow up because they're angry. And then they set these really strong boundaries. But you'll see with a fearful avoidant in their healing journey, boundaries are consistent. You can be assertive in real time. And I'll speak for myself. I went from like never having boundaries and then I would blow up about something to being able to say like, hey, that doesn't feel great for me. That's uncomfortable for me. I don't really like that. Can we work on that? Can we change this? Or just being able to say, hey, no, I actually don't really want to do that. What else can we do here instead? And being able to just speak up in real time in the moment. And by being able to do that, you don't hold things in and then feel resentment and then become a volcano erupting later on. You're actually able to address these things before they become problematic later on. And it saves you a lot of time that you'll spend later on getting frustrated about something, not handling a conflict well or a boundary well, being like a little more volatile in your reaction, then feeling badly about it, and then going back to be boundaryless again, and all of the tax on your subconscious mind and nervous system as a result, you can prevent in a lot more detail. So as I mentioned, if you want to go deeper into some of the actual healing of those things, you can check out down below that link to the Fearful Avoidant Attachment Style Healing course. It also comes with the Attachment Styles and Sex course for free for life. And if you have questions about this, let me know in the comments down below. I want to really support you if you're on this journey right now in any way that I can and know what it's like to be there. So let me know down below and make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying this channel. And I'll see you in future videos. Thanks for watching.